welcome back to another episode of painting 31 animals in 31 days for my January challenge. I think I'm finally almost at the point where I'm ready to accept to myself that I should start calling them like painting 12 instead of day 12, as we are 5 days behind and it's about 10 p.m. on the 19th and I've already started the zebra. We're painting zebras today, but I'm not gonna finish it again today. Black and white paint was hard, looking for reference images online was hard, and editing videos is hard because I haven't edited the video for the puffin yet. So that's some real talk about where we are at in the challenge and accepting to myself that I am not probably going to finish 31 paintings to the quality that I would have hoped while trying to release a YouTube video every day. That was a very ambitious goal considering what we're trying to do with them. And every day I'm like, yeah, this one will be simple. It'll just take like 5 hours. I can do 2 today. We will catch up. That never happens. You always use the time that you have, and it's really hard to start and finish 2 paintings in the same day mentally. So that's where we're at. Anyway, the puffin, well, we have it lovely sitting here. If you want to see how this was painted, the link will be up above in the cards. And today we are painting zebras. So I have this image that I found. I have already started painting this one before filming the introduction and the outro to the puffin video. My goal today was I was gonna come in, find a reference image and paint it. And there was some stuff to set up. I used a random generator today to use all of your animal suggestions unbiasedly. And then it was quite a challenge to go through and pick out the reference image that I wanted to use. And I also chose some reference images for some other animals. We have a vote going on right now between polar bear and elephant seal that are happening, and I have images for both of those species. The elephant seal, I took the photo myself as well. And we are just rethinking some of the things in the challenge today. So it was a bit of a reflection day. Anyway, yeah, so the zebra. We're gonna go to it from the beginning very shortly. But I thought it would be an easier painting to do based on the fact that it's black and white and basically just stripes. There's not really much fur texture or anything like that. And it's not as patterned as like the snail would have been, or especially the iguana. And yet, because it's black and white paint, it's very difficult to try and get full coverage on an area. You kind of have to go over every line you make very precisely and have very like delicate, precise strokes. So there are definitely some challenges that make this time-lapse talk and reflection interesting. And we were going to record the intro and outro video for this at the same time in the evening, edit both videos and be rolling. But I'm not gonna finish the zebra tonight. So we're just gonna go and try and finish this animal tonight and see how far we get to on this guy in the morning. Tomorrow we're also very likely painting a polar bear. It's leading in the polls. So hopefully that animal will be final famous last words. Anyway, that's the introduction to the zebra, and it's a bit of a longer ramble than I normally do here, but there's some important check-in points now that we're halfway through the amount of paintings that we're supposed to be creating throughout the month. So there's lots of lessons in there about ambitious goals and when to accept that you should dial it back a little bit. But we'll go from the beginning. Here's the zebra. That's actually so funny. I'm editing this 2 days later, and it's painful almost for me to watch the intro that I recorded, for the fact that I really thought that the zebra was going to be a catching up animal, and it was so not. It's like one of the longest animals, like the longest times I've spent painting. I haven't tallied the total number of hours that went into this one, but this painting has a very long ugly stage, a very, very prolonged ugly stage in my opinion. It looked like such poop to me for so long. I was so frustrated with it. And yeah, I definitely lost a whole nother day in this choice, but that's okay, because at the end of the day, the challenge is just about pushing yourself to try and create things. And yes, trying to stick to a hard limit of 1 day was achievable last year, I think the reason that it's not is because I typically edit the videos in the morning, and then by the time I get to painting, it's already pretty much kind of mid-afternoon this time. So that is a significant amount of hours, and then late at night you just get tired. So yeah, but right now it's the canvas kind of looks really gross. I used yellow chalk. I typically use white chalk, but I used yellow chalk this time to try and plan where the stripes were. I honestly, it didn't do that much. You can see how frequently I'm having to look over at the reference image. The chalk was so confusing because it's stripes. It took forever to do this. I was so lost. But yeah, just trying to get the loose placement of them in. And I also figured I'd try and save time on this one by painting it from one of my like more whiter canvases that I've prepped. Some of them I have as white gesso, some I have as a gray gesso, depending on what I was going to use the base as kind of like a color. Think of it as kind of like a primer. So if you're going to do a dark background, use a darker like tinted gesso. Anyway, so I did all 31 canvases when I was prepping them to different degrees of this. So I was like, I'll use white because white is hard to cover over black. You'd have to go over it many times. So that's why I painted the black stripes and left the other part white. And then I'm gonna go back in and make the background black. But it was very difficult to try and not lose my place in the stripes. And also the chalk, like you can see it's almost entirely smudged out. Like there's no reference lines in chalk anymore. It was so smudged with my hand. I kept wiping the side of my hand to get rid of it on my pants, and the whole right side of my pant leg was just so yellow. It was so funny. But yeah, I finally get rid of the chalk. It was just bothering me so much to take that stuff off. Okay, so now we're on to the background part, which is exciting. So I actually decided to use gesso. You can see it's kind of like the bigger bottle there. So I'm using gesso first, and then I'm going over it with black paint. Gesso covers well, but it has a very different sheen than paint. So I always like to cover it up with actual paint on my work. And yeah, but the reason that you put gesso on canvases, especially wood first, is to add tooth. It kind of adds a texture to your canvases that helps paint stick to it better. So I'll do a video at some point on how I prep my birchwood that I paint on, but there's a water sealant that's very important first on both the front and the back, because you don't want the wood to get wet and expand on you. So that's a very important step. And then it's many layers of gesso and sanding is the gist of that. But yeah, this is a longer painting, so feel free to grab a cup of tea as we are watching through it. And basically I did the black gesso on camera, and then I kind of took it and just sat in a chair on my lap, and I've went over all the black background with black paint off camera. And this is me starting to blend out the white area that's going to be part of the gradient. The reason that the zebra became so difficult is because I didn't think it would be challenging from the reference image, because I don't know why I didn't see it, but to get the zebra's face to look 3D, every individual white line and every individual black line is actually a very subtle gradient. So you really have to paint it as an optical illusion to try and get that 3D texture. Otherwise it looks very flat and confusing, especially with the two animals in here. But I'm using a fairly large brush with a really well-defined point. And the point of the brush is kind of angled just from sometimes sitting in my water glass a little too long. But it actually really helps in something like this because it's got a pretty nice little razor edge, and I'm able to follow along the lines and then kind of add more pressure to get them to expand out at different areas. If you can see when I'm painting over the black lines, it's kind of when you notice it the most. But yeah, otherwise I'm just trying to still redo the block and stage in white first, and then I go over it with black because black covers so much better. So I'm trying to kind of create those gradients in the white areas and not really worry about going over the black lines too much. their place is held a little bit more than chalk would have been in this kind of initial sketch. And when I go back in with the white gradient, then I can go back and redo the black line again. So I'm trying to pay attention to areas of the zebra face that is in shadow, especially around like its cheekbone. Anybody that puts, makeup on, you kind of do the contour. So the zebra and horse faces has a really nice, distinct cheekbone line that kind of follows along their face. And then you can also kind of see that 3D texture around their cheek as well. And the shape of the stripes helps accomplish this. Also, the gradient though is very important. So I wanted to make sure in really bright areas where I'm using pure white on the zebra, I have a gray on the black stripes. And same thing that if it's a really light gray for the shadow areas on the white, that's the area that has the darkest black of the black stripes. So by matching those two, you get kind of an even look of light across the animal, even though you're using such opposite color tones throughout the animal. And yeah, when I'm blocking in the fur at the top of the zebra's head, their little mohawks, I kind of went back and forth on black and white paint, and you can see the individual hairs, so I didn't want to overblend it, but it's really important to kind of make them stand out. I think I paint them and then leave them and then paint them again, kind of every few hours. So you'll see me jump back and forth between them. And here we are working on the bottom bit of the gradient. It's slightly off camera, so I apologize for that. It's kind of hard to remember when I'm trying to mix up the camera angles and make it diverse for you, that sometimes you can't, I forget where the camera's pointing at and get carried away painting. It's hard to pay attention to both. My camera typically beeps at me when it's taken 3,000 photos. It takes a photo every 1 second is how I have this time lapse set up. So when it beeps that it's done, or it beeps when the camera runs out of battery, that's when I'll change the position of the camera. Otherwise, I kind of just try and be aware. So if I'm, painting this animal, then I'll have it mostly focused on the zebra to the right, and then I'll reshift it when I go to paint a different area. But sometimes it's hard to pay attention to that. And I did paint the zebra around the side of the painting. I actually even did the chalk lines of it around the side, so it seamlessly flows over the edge of the canvas, which is really fun. Yeah, so you can see I've added that lighter gray to the black stripes, and that kind of helps that animal on the right already kind of look more 3D. It's a rough version, but we're getting there at this stage. And it's just lots of blending. I don't want to go over the dark stripes too much and lose the placement of them. So I was really trying to be careful with my blending and just keep it within the area between the black stripes. But it's really hard to create gradients between black and white. I don't know why it's so difficult. I think it's just your eye sees the imperfections in it a lot more than you would see color. And it just really bothered me. It took a long time to blend this out. I always used to think that whales and underwater animals, because they have such smooth skin, were the biggest challenge for blending in general. But now I really think that the zebra is if anybody wants to master blending an animal, paint a zebra and try and get it to 3D. Any optical illusion, actually, for that matter, if you find one online and then just go to try and recreate it with paint, that would give you a very good appreciation for the optical illusion tricks that the mind can play on each other. This pattern too was very difficult to try and get the distinguish feature between the zebra's shoulder and then the rest of its body that's kind of a lot darker. So I spent a lot of time trying to blend those lines and create that illusion out. And you can see even right now there's 4 distinct colors along the one main stripe, but we'll smooth that out later. And And same thing with the other zebra's body, trying to get the stripes narrower as they go further away as well also kind of helps create that perspective. And then I realized there was a bit more of a shadow underneath its chin, so I was trying to get that a bit darker and smooth that all out. And now that we're on to the eyes of the zebra, it's very difficult because they have very dark eyelashes, and it was pretty much, especially in the photograph, just a black hole. So I wanted to create more expression in when I painted it. So I use a light gray to kind of create the eyelashes that you can kind of see the perspective of them hanging over the eye, and of course get a nice bright white glint in the zebra's eye and get some of that moisture below it as well. And when I was doing this part, I completely end up smudging the dot in the eye, and I have to go over and redo it, but I guess it hasn't happened yet. I thought it should have been dry, but I go to move on and completely smudged out at some point. Yeah, it's a cute little nose, trying to build up some texture in there. And then I realized later it's actually way too light here. Yeah, so I've started on that eye now. Trying to get all those stripes in there. And I'd already kind of created a white gradient and then repainted the stripes once on this zebra head, but I realized it wasn't actually as good as I had wanted it to be. Oh, this is the one I smudged out. There it goes. To quickly fix it again. Forgot which zebra it was, but yeah, it was this one. It was just a quick blimp in time for this one, but I had just painted it, and then I went over to do the left eye of the zebra and completely smudged it with my hand, and it was like such a moment of just like staring at the canvas of like, why did I do that? Acrylic paint dries pretty quick, but especially the dots on the eye is typically thicker paint because you want it really bright. Anyway, I digress. And this is kind of the end of the painting. So I'm just kind of trying to redefine some of the brush strokes on the ears. Otherwise, this is all she wrote. And I hope you guys liked this extended tutorial on how to paint optical illusions in animals. Thank you so much for watching until all the way the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I had a lot of fun painting the optical illusions that are hidden within zebras. If you want to check out the rest of the videos in this playlist, the link is gonna be below, and we're gonna see you guys around really soon. Next, we are painting a polar bear, which is very exciting. Lots of white fur, lots of different colors, and ways to create depth and how it's gonna stand out. So that's coming up next. See you soon.